Hello, everyone. It's good to have you all on board. Okay, it's great to have you all on board. And today, it's going to be a continuation on the course. All right, it's going to be a continuation on the course CSS3. And we've had a couple of classes on the course, and we'll be discussing certain things about violence. And just like I explained, all right, a disclaimer: this channel, all right, doesn't encourage violence or the use of it. What we do basically here is educational, all right, follow a material, a course material, and we educate and inform, all right. So we don't encourage or instigate violence. With this being said, for those of us who are new to the stream, we have what we call our private class, where we walk you through all your private class as soon as you sign up. Also, not leaving any course unattended to. All you need to do is just sign up, and we will be there to guide you and walk you through all your courses. Now, how do you get to become a member of our private class? All you need to do is just head straight to our official website, www.tutoral.net, and there's a WhatsApp button on the top right hand corner to send us a direct message, and we can walk you through the process. With this being said, let's go straight into it. Okay, so all right, we have the course CSS, okay, CSS 381. And to start with, just a moment. All right. Now, we're going to be talking about, just like it says, all right, justified, all right, violence and justification. Violence and justification. Violence and justification. Okay. And it sounds somehow, why should violence be justified? All right. If you look at it with the way this is being arranged, you feel like, should violence be justified? Definitely not. All right. But according to the course material, we are going to be looking at things in some different angle. All right. We're going to be considering certain things from different angles. So I need you to please take your writing materials, your notepad, all right, and follow us as we go through this. But before we talk about justify or violence justified, I want us to touch very quickly on national security measures against violence. All right, let's quickly talk about national security measures against violence. Now, when we talk about the national security measures against violence, here we are referring to the fact, we are simply referring to, all right, how security, all right, at national level, all right, manages violence. All right, we are simply referring to security operating personnel, all right, or security operating organizations owned and managed by both the government and private sector, how they manage and how they manage and put violence under subjugation. Now, what are we saying here? As we all know, that at this level, certain equipment are necessary, all right, at the national level. Just like we all know that, yes, different security, all right, different security organization with different equipment. Now, even though we have security agents or security agencies, all right, they differ from each other in the sense that as they differ from each other, so is their equipment different from each other. Now, the security at the national level, this is the security, all right, or the securing responsibility at the apex. And therefore, as good, all right, equipment as effective and as good as can be should be offered to personnel at this level in order to tackle, all right, tackle challenging security issues, all right, or monumental crisis. Now, with this equipment, training, all right, this national security, the national security measures against violence is basically the responsibility of security agencies and personnel at national level with the aid and assistance or help of providing them with effective, up-to-date, or most effective equipment. You just have to make do with what we have at our disposal. Can we hear me now? I think I need to adjust my camera a little bit. Is the audio manageable? Okay, I think the audio is manageable. Okay, so now, as I was explaining, monumental crisis. Now, when we refer to monumental crisis, all countries, oh, thank you very much for that. It is normal for a country, a nation, a continent, a state to face security issues. It is normal. All right? In as much as we have people, we have borders, we have limited resources that should be properly distributed, and there will be what we call monumental crisis. We are simply referring to major or significant crisis between, all right, states. It says now, having talked about the monumental crisis, let's hop straight into the next thing we have here. which is the violence justified. Good evening. You came a bit late, Mr. Kayode. You came a bit late, but nevertheless, you are welcome. And ensure to reach out to me after this class so we can add you to the private class where we walk you through everything. Now, violence justified. Very important. We need to know something about this. Okay? What do we understand? What is the basic concept we need to get about violence justified? Now, violence is said to be an irreversible process. Alright? An irreversible process of change. I think I need to erase this. Now, what do we mean by irreversible process of change? Let's break that down. So we have violence justified. Now, it is said here that violence is an irreversible process. Okay, I beg your pardon, that is not irreversible. It is said to be a reversible process of change. Okay? A reversible process of change. Now, what seems violent today may tomorrow become, may tomorrow become a normal act or attitude. We are getting there. Now, in a social interaction, it is inevitable and unavoidable. Now, let's break this down properly. Just like what we say here, violence is irreversible process of change. In a sense, it's a reversible process of change. In the sense that what seems violence today can, if care is not taken, can become something normal in the nearest future. Alright? It can, if care is not taken, will become normal or attitude in the nearest future. And trust me, when we were discussing conflict, we said that conflict is something that is a constant element in as much as we have people living together. Alright? People will definitely have misunderstanding. They will definitely step on each other's toes. Right? But the way it is being managed and controlled that determines if the conflict is destructive or constructive. Alright? And that's what we are being told here, that in a social interaction, violence is inevitable and unavoidable. It is to the end that violence has come to get some basis for justification. So because now that violence now seems to be inevitable and unavoidable, because of this now, it has now gotten, to a particular end that it says, I have reasons, which is the justification. I have reasons. It takes us back to what we now said. It is a reversible process of change. Being violent today, if it's not properly handled, can become a phenomenon. Now let's get some more points on that. Violence justified refers to an arrangement. Alright? It says here, it refers to a belief can also be seen as an argument or a belief that violence is acceptable, that violence is acceptable. Okay? Under certain circumstances. Acceptable under certain circumstances. Okay? Now, you know what I said from the beginning, that care is not taken. What seemingly looks like a little kind of violence today, all right, can become an attitude or an accepted character. So now, violence justified now, a straight definition in a nutshell, is a belief. It can also be an argument that violence is acceptable, that the use of violence is acceptable, is allowed in certain situations. Okay? Now, it raises ethical, legal, and philosophical questions about when, if ever, harming others can be considered legitimate. Are we together? It raises certain question. All right? It raises ethical, now if you say violence is justified, is permitted, is allowed under certain situation, so this statement or this belief or argument raises, okay, it raises, are we together? It raises ethical, legal, and philosophical. It raises ethical, legal, and philosophical, okay, ethical, legal, and philosophical. Are we together? Questions. I think the microphone should work now. I think that's a well charged now. Let's use my phone now. Although our time is fast spent already, but the microphone should work now. Okay. Now, can we hear me? Now, it raises questions. Ethical, ethics, legal according to the law, and philosophical, moral, all right, general palace, okay, questions about when, all right, and if ever harming others, questions about when and if ever harming others, okay, inflicting harm on others can be considered equals legitimate. Now, what are we trying to pass here? I am not saying that this is an argument. I'm not saying that violence is justified. I'm not saying that it is not justified. We are working according to the course material. I want to see how violence is justified and how not violence is justified. That is basically, we are being objective in this. All right? We are not being emotional. We are being strictly objective. All right? So now let's quickly consider some context. All right? Some context for justifying violence. So some of the context for justifying violence, I wouldn't want to take my time to write it out because our time is fast spent. Some of the context for justifying violence or situations we have the likes of self-defense. All right. When you use violence to protect yourself, all right, um, from being harmed by others. All right. When in a situation of national insecurity, all right, a situation of resistance and the likes. Right? But one thing I want you to hold on to here is in a situation of self-defense. All right. Although it is not the best option, all right, but it seemed like the only available option. All right. So this context, it is advisable to use it. Okay, according to the material. So now let's quickly talk about the conceptual explanation of violence. When we say conceptual explanation of violence, what are we talking about? Conceptual all right, explanation of violence. Violence is a complex and multifaceted phenomenon. All right, you can see it, you can look at it from different angles. All right, that has been studied across various disciplines. Okay, that has been studied across various disciplines. Speaking of sociology, criminology, science, and the likes, and it encompasses a various range and actions. All right, among which are the cause of harm, injuries, and the like. To understand violence conceptually, it is essential for us to quickly talk about certain things. Number one, we talked about the definition of violence already. It is commonly defined as the use of physical force or power to threaten, all right, one, to threaten another, okay, the use of power of physical force, all right. And we have the types of violence, the physical violence, which is physical. All right. We have emotional, psychology, all these things we discussed in our respective class. And some of the causes of violence, they are biological factors, which is generic. All right. Generic is with the blood, the genetics of that individual. And we also have psychological factors, people that are facing mental disorder. They can suddenly do something that are very, very irrational. Okay, so we have that as that. So very quickly, I want us to talk about making sense of violence. All right. When we say making sense of violence, our time is fast spent. But I just want to quickly touch this. When we say making sense of violence, we are simply referring to the process of understanding the cause, the causes, the impacts, and meaning of violent action within a personal, social, or historical context. Making sense. Why is it? Why is violence this? Why is it that? So, among other things that we can consider under making sense of violence, we have psychological perspective. Under the psychological perspective, we want to understand why individuals or group, all right, resort violence. All right. And as a result of this, we are considering things like their mental health. What is their social conditioning? Okay. So, like I said, in a private class, you get the full package, all these things, and even the exam keynotes, where we have all these things properly structured. And there's a good example of this making sense of violence, where there's an explanation of the 13-year-old Fatima responding to the vices, all right, responding to the vices in our social circle. So we have that as that. So we're going to call it up here for today. And in our next class, we'll be talking about the ideological roots of violence and its legitimation. So thank you very much, everyone. I believe we have been able to gain something in today's class. Please let's ensure to submit our notes to the appropriate quarters after this class. And don't forget to join the private class. You have a wonderful evening and bye for now.